Thank you all for joining us today and welcome to today's webinar, Streamlining Your Windows 11 Deployment with Intune. This webinar is brought to you by Remote 3. My name is Misty Scott and I am pleased to be your moderator today. I'm also very excited to introduce our speakers. Ricky Patel is our Customer Solutions Engineer, supporting enterprise clients across EMEA to streamline application readiness and accelerate modern endpoint adoption through automation. Mike Bruce is our Director of Sales. Mike helps businesses migrate, manage, and optimize their applications across physical, virtual, and cloud-based workspaces. Thank you guys for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it on over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Misty. Okay, so thank you for joining. My name is Mike Bruce. We're here to talk about how Remo 3 and our Intune reporting can help you with Windows 11. I thought it would be really helpful to take a step back, talk a little bit about the Remo 3 platform and how we can comprehensively help you with Windows 11. So if you look at the slide in front of you, the first area that Remo 3 can help you with is your Windows application migration. And normally folks are doing this alongside some other version or flavor of modernization. So it could be I'm going to Intune like today. I'm getting off of SCCM, or it could be I'm making a change to my VDI environment, going to AVD or Windows 365. So Remo 3 has an automated workflow engine that can take your legacy applications, modernize them for any of these areas, and then migrate them to whatever your management plane is, or make sure that they're validated against your new operating system. But that's only part of the battle. Once you get where you're going, your applications don't stop changing. The builds that they run on don't stop changing either. In fact, Ricky's going to talk a bit more about how we can help you with those Windows updates. But we have a catalog of applications that you can subscribe to an application through. When a new version hits that catalog, Remo 3 will then validate it against whatever your context is over here. So whether it's a physical Windows operating system that is your build, that you've hardened, you've policied, you've put agents into, or it's a physical or a virtual version of that build, Remo 3 can contextually validate the application and then wrap it in Intune Win and put it into Intune for you. So this part of our platform helps you get where you're going towards modern, and then we keep you there evergreened, and all of that with automation without human interaction. Today, we're here to talk about our Intune reporting. As you can see below, we help folks in this area because it's a little bit difficult to get this data together. It can be fragmented. You may be required to hire somebody that knows where all that data resides, and then you sort of ask them, hey, can you respond to this question for me? Inside of our dashboard that Ricky's going to show you in just a moment, there's all kinds of things. In fact, we think we've thought of everything, and it's all out of the box. It takes about 30 minutes to deploy, but in case there's something that is missing, it's really easy to build a widget, a data visualization, a WikiWig using our dashboard that can fit any of your requirements. So what folks are doing with this dashboard is they're identifying vulnerable applications, they're monitoring their SLA performance, and also if you have a policy that you are adhering to, whether it's in EMEA or in the Americas, and they may all be a little bit different, you can mold the dashboard to fit whatever that policy is so that you can report on it and see how you're doing against your goals. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ricky. So Ricky, go ahead and take over. If you have questions, please put them into the chat and we will respond to them after Ricky's session. And over to you, Ricky.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mike. So welcome everyone to Remo's Intune reporting tool. And I guess it'll be good for me to just touch on where this was all driven from. So like Mike mentioned, a lot of you would have come from maybe a config manager background, maybe those on-premise toolings. And the idea based on what we've created here is data in a more visual form, but taking all the data from your more modern toolings, such as Intune. So by taking that data from Intune, from Entra, from Windows Update for Business, as you'll be using Intune to manage your devices, you'll be using Entra for your identities, and Windows Updates for keeping your devices up to date, by consolidating that data together into one central location, I'm now able to present you with our Intune reporting dashboards. So starting with that homepage, the idea behind what we do here is to very much consolidate that data as to how many devices do I have within my environment. Of those devices, how many of those are compliant? And as security updates play a big factor in what we do today, we can then explore how many devices are either not on the latest version, on the latest version, or maybe missing multiple updates. So as we go through this, the direction has been Windows 11 for many months, if not over a year now, for the direction of Windows 11 as Windows 10 is now coming end of life. And that could involve organizations changing their methods of provisioning devices to things like Autopilot, wanting to know how successful their builds have been versus how many failures they've been encountering, and how long is our builds taking in order for us to maybe rebuild our devices to provision a new device on Windows 11. So when it comes to Windows 11, we often talk to this as it's now a feature update. And we like to say that, yes, we can use Windows Update for Business data to be able to guide us on the direction of how successful is our deployments going to be. So by feeding in the data from Windows Update for Business, we're able to get a good understanding as to how many devices are not going to be able to upgrade, allowing us to then focus on, yes, we need to be able to procure 100, 200, 1,000 new devices, because all of a sudden in 2 months' time, I'm going to have unsupported devices. So by using that Windows Update for Business and making sure that your devices are pulling that diagnostic data, we're then able to capture a whole host of information, such as any devices that may be encountering application-based issues, driver issues, or other issues. But by going into the platform and wherever you see this paperclip icon, that allows you to very much expand into the data within the platform rather than just giving you high-level visualizations. And it often becomes the case that when data isn't being received from Windows Update for Business, we often can't report on those devices, and we're in the unknown as to what state is that device in. Is that already upgraded to Windows 11? Has it been online in Intune long enough for that data to synchronize into Windows Update for Business? And if there is any issues that are being captured from Windows Update for Business, we'll then be able to pull those alerts into this dashboard, allowing you to then be able to see how many devices may have insufficient update connectivity, if any issues have been automatically resolved themselves. And maybe I want to understand if a device has experienced an issue, then what's going on with that device. So again, by drilling in, by clicking on that paperclip icon, I can then come into this device to understand the device name, the make, the model, the serial number of the device, who the primary user is, who's the user that is being impacted by this device maybe not upgrading to the latest version of Windows 11. If I wanted to check what version of Windows 11 it's on, maybe I need to upgrade this device to 24H2 or the more upcoming 25H2. But very easily, I'm able to understand that this user is on an older version of Windows 11. We also need to get her to the latest and greatest version, so we're in line with our compliance and security guidelines from maybe being set by our security teams. And then to my point earlier as to when was this device enrolled into the platform, when was it last synchronized into Intune, and was it online long enough for it to synchronize into Windows Update for Business? So like you can see here, the device was actually online a couple of days ago. It wasn't online long enough for Windows Update for Business to capture its information. So we're able to see here that actually this device hasn't been updated in a long time. But don't worry, this is just a device from my lab environment. So further to that point, when it comes to hardware specs and those performance metrics, especially when there's hardware factors at play when it comes to Windows 11 upgrades, we may often want to see that, does this device have enough memory? Is there enough free disk space for us to apply that upgrade to it? What's this device going to do if it only has 39 gig free and Windows 11 requires a 50 gig free space capacity? So when we come back to that feature update dashboard, it very much comes into play as to providing you that data at pace and at scale, but being able to allow you to drill into that data set to understand how many devices have maybe already been upgraded to your target version of Windows, how many of those devices are within support, and which devices should we maybe be concerned about that are coming to an end for their support cycle. If we're looking at it from more of a hardware perspective, like I mentioned earlier, then my 26 devices from my lab environment are very much showing here that there shouldn't be any experiences that we face when it comes to RAM, storage, TPM chips, any secure boot components, any processor components as well, or anything to do with the CPU, giving me great confidence that I will be able to upgrade all my devices to Windows 11 successfully, or at least to the latest and greatest version. When it comes to those deployments from Intune, like you can see here on the left-hand side, I've got my list of devices. Again, all this data is being pulled from your data sources, so Intune, Windows Update for Business, and Entra ID. I'm now able to see the target version that has been set, the version that has been that the device is currently running on, and if I wanted to understand a bit more, then is this device within support? This is actually the device that is nearing support. And believe it or not, that's the device that we drilled into earlier, which was that Windows 11 22H2 device. This could mean that I need to go into Intune, make sure I'm deploying the latest version as the target version rather than 22H2, allowing for my lab devices, and in your case, your production devices, to be on the latest and greatest version. We can see here when that deployment was carried out or when that was initially initiated and the state that offering was in for that deployment, as well as any make and model components as well. So when it comes to once your devices are into the platform, and like Mike said, we very much started you off with a whole host of dashboards, but the opportunity is very much there to take that data and be able to create your own dashboard. So naturally, as we started to build the platform, there was more and more ideas coming to play that very much started as a custom dashboard. And believe it or not, we've got so many now that I'm having to click down on the drop down. So when we head into things like asset insights, which again plays a big factor when it comes to your Windows 11 adoption journey, you may start to care about how many devices are within Intune today, especially if you're migrating from an existing platform such as Config Manager, otherwise known as SCCM, like Mike mentioned. And when you're in Intune, you want to be able to manage that environment as cleanly as you can. And how many of those devices are actually online? How many of those have been inactive for a duration of time? And from that, especially when it comes to devices that may already be in Intune, if they're not active, then unfortunately, we're not going to be able to push a policy out to them, allowing them to upgrade successfully. There could be components that, like I mentioned before, instead of you having to drill into specific devices, you have the opportunity here to be able to see at a very high level the device name, the make, the model, the serial number, and the spec of the device. And instead of restricting that information to just these views, you also have the opportunity by clicking on the three dots in the top right-hand corner, exporting that data, and you may want it as an image, you may want it as Excel or PDF, and it could be used to support with any of those support desk teams. And again, for any of those devices, we allow you to drill directly into that device as well, meaning you'll be able to support those devices more thoroughly. So when it comes to Autopilot, and especially when it comes to provisioning devices, there could be information about Autopilot profiles being created as to what needs to be part of our build. Maybe you've got technical members of staff that haven't actually experienced Intune, and they may not know where to click within Intune to be able to capture this information. But very easily from the dashboards, we were able to see here that there's an Autopilot profile, there's a desktop profile, and a Remo 3 deployment profile. And what is the configuration sets that are being set here? So without, again, having to go into Intune directly, I'm able to see the configuration of the Autopilot profile, and then naturally, as part of the enrollment status page configuration, I'm then also able to see that, yes, there could be an end user experiencing a retry attempt. The reason why it's not working is because that parameter is set to true. And again, as part of that process, why is that device maybe not installing any new updates, and why are those updates being installed afterwards can also be factored in here. So we can very quickly see that install quality updates is turned off, which is why maybe all of my devices, when they're being provisioned, are just out of the box Windows 11 24H2 with any of those cumulative updates applied to them. So hopefully that gives you a good idea as to those autopilot bits. As well as that, we then also do have the group tag components. If you are purchasing those devices from a supplier and those purchase order components are coming through, then you can also feed that data directly into Intune. And guess what? It's captured by us as well. If you are doing things like mass deployments of applications, we can then very easily see here that devices are being enrolled over the, say, last 30 days. If I want to go back in time, we don't want to limit you to just that 30-day period. Maybe I'll go back to the beginning of March to understand what was our trend of devices, how frequently are our support desk teams or our EUC teams provisioning devices, and is there certain peaks in the year where we require for maybe more members of staff to be available, to be able to support maybe more provisioning of devices? Is it happening over certain months of the year? Do I need to go back further to maybe the beginning of the year to get a good understanding as to, yes, we did more builds towards May and towards the end of May, and then it trickled off as we headed into June, and maybe there's another staff increase further down in the year. In the same way, unfortunately, I haven't done any deployments recently, but in the same way, you'll be able to see the devices being deployed into Intune as well. And then the journey becomes, once I've got my devices into Intune, I've now upgraded those devices to Windows 11, and I've made sure that we are meeting those hardware and software and related issues, is then how do I keep that Windows 11 device up to date? So by, again, expanding the panes or naturally seeing them within the existing view, I'm able to see here that within my lab environment, I've actually got a lot of devices that are on Windows 11 24H2, but they're all on different releases. So how do I make sure that all our devices that are on 24H2 are on the same version or the same cumulative update? And then being able to see here that there is a number of devices that are either up to date, there's a number of devices that are out of date, and how many devices maybe experienced an issue this month, and of those, how many of those issues have been resolved already. Then again, towards the beginning of the session, I demonstrated that diagnostic data. We can very easily head back into there to be able to understand, is there any error messages? And when it comes to those deployment trends, we can then start to see that the updates are deployed to the organization. We can then see just at Patch Tuesday, when the new updates have been released, all our devices then trickle off to 0. And then the journey starts again. And lots of organizations face the same problem. But unfortunately, we may not be always capturing how many devices are actually on the latest version at one time, or how many of those devices are either on the latest version, but maybe missing multiple security updates as well. And who are these devices that are not on the latest version consistently? Are they being missed out of a policy that is allowing them to get onto the latest version? So in the same way that I just showed you previously for the feature updates, we very much want to give you the same idea as to, for these devices in here, what are those versions that they're on today? Is there any inconsistencies between the OS version based on different cumulative updates? And also, when was that update released out to those devices? And as you can see here, a majority of these are out of date. But from a troubleshooting perspective, they're out of date. They have been synchronized into Intune in the last couple of days. Windows Update for Business also captured that information. So is there something going wrong within our Intune environment, which is not allowing these devices to upgrade to the latest version? So let me just head back down there. And the last and final one is, and this will be covered in more detail in our next session as well. But once you've also focused on Windows updates, please don't forget that there's also application vulnerabilities that exist in the world, especially when it comes to some of those application vendors. And the idea behind what I'm showing you here is giving you an understanding as to how many applications or devices are being impacted by CVEs within your environment, allowing for your teams to be able to understand that, guys, we have 3 different versions of the Git application, which are impacting 3 different devices in my scenario. In your scenario, that could be hundreds, if not thousands of devices being impacted, and maybe questions being raised as to why are there 3 different versions? Do we need to get all these applications onto the same version in order for us to be as compliant as we can? When it comes to maybe the affected vulnerabilities from publishers across the application vendor stream, then when are we seeing most of our vulnerabilities being picked in the year? Is there more of a focus? Is there something that's being changed within the organization at a certain time of year, which is directly impacting the organization when it comes to this application vulnerability perspective? I'm just conscious on time, so I'm just going to pass over back to Mike. But thank you very much for today's session.
Thank you very much, Ricky. Great job. Let me go ahead and share again. Okay, so this is the Q&A part of our session for today. If you have questions, please drop them into the chat, and we will get to them in the order that they are submitted. If for some reason we don't get to them while the session's still running, we'll respond one-off electronically to you. And while we're waiting for that, if you scan this QR code on the right, it's going to take you to the Remo 3 Intune reporting landing page. From there, you can find all kinds of resources and information, a lot of what we covered today. But you'll also find a button that you can click to start your free 30-day trial of our Intune reporting. You can click a button to schedule to book a demo with us. Also on that remo3.com, if you go to About in the tab, under that, you'll find an All Events tab. And if you hover over that, you can find all of our upcoming events. So if you thought today was valuable and you're interested in learning more about Remo 3, you can always sign up for the upcoming events. If your requirement is more personal, you'd like to schedule a one-off assessment, some sort of review with just your Remo 3 professional and you and your team, you're also welcome to email Ricky and myself at these email addresses down here, and we'll get that scheduled for you. And all right, let me look at the chat here. Ricky, we have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
How is Remo 3 Intune reporting different from using Power BI with Intune data?
Perfect. That's a great question, guys. So while Power BI is a powerful tool, it requires things like time, licenses, and specialized skills to be able to build and maintain different types of reports. Whereas our Intune reporting tool basically eliminates some of those overheads, allows us to basically provide you some of those pre-built dashboards in advance and a very good, easy graphical interface for you to be able to build your own dashboards.
Awesome. Great. Okay, we do have another one as well.
Sure.
What kind of data sources does Remo 3 integrate with? Remo 3 Intune reporting, I think, is what they meant. Integrate with.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I mentioned on the session, so as part of what we do, we integrate directly and pull the data from Microsoft Graph, and that could be from your Intune environment, your Entra ID environment, your Windows Update Log Analytics container. And also, as I showed you towards the back end of the demo, it is going to also pull data from the NIST CVE data store, allowing us to pull that data for devices that may have application vulnerabilities, and not just for applications deployed from Intune, but applications that may already be manually installed on those devices.
Standing. And I think we have time for one more, Ricky.
Okay.
How does Intune reporting support security and compliance?
Very similar to the question we just had. So like I mentioned, we are pulling the data from that NIST CVE data store. We're then providing you with that CVE detection data. We do have additional compliance dashboards, which shows your device compliances against your existing policies or profiles within Intune, how compliant those devices are, which components of that certain compliance policy your devices are not compliant against. And what will be coming in the future is things like proactive alerts. So we want to be able to share with you, rather than having to come into the dashboards, what's going on your devices, how compliant are they, and is there anything that you should be concerned about?